Hello, everybody, and welcome to From the Mezzanine. From the Mezzanine is the Broadway podcast for the Broadway fans, where we talk about all things Broadway news, Broadway grosses, and let's be honest, all of the tea and gossip that happens week to week in the Broadway stratosphere. How are all of you doing? I hope you are doing fantastic. I've been a busy girl this week because I saw two shows since we spoke last. Suffs and The Outsiders. And I'm going to talk about The Outsiders first because I have to tell you all about it. So last week when we last chatted, we had rushed the show that morning. Well, we got the box seats and we were in box B on the left. And just for price transparency, we paid $129 for those seats, but it was a Saturday night performance. Was it steeper than we were wanting? Yes. Absolutely. By the way, may I add for just a moment, I feel like every time, like every podcast for the last 3 months has started out with like a chat about, so I saw The Outsiders, and don't worry, I'm not going to get into it every single time. However, my sister was in town, so we had to go and see it because she hadn't seen it yet. And I totally like hyped it up and she was so excited. We did have some understudies. I was praying. I was sitting in front of my bed, kneeled down saying, "Dear Lord," and yes, this is definitely sacrilegious. However, "Dear Lord, please, please, please let Joshua Boone and Brent Comer be in because they are so sparkly and their star power is so intense and incredible that I was like, I don't want to see The Outsiders without them in it. Everybody else in the OBC is amazing. I need Joshua Boone and Brent Comer in the show when I go and see it, just because they set it, like they take the show to a whole new level. I think they are some of the best acting on Broadway right now, period. And I'm confident in that, like truly. Anyways, so I needed Joshua Boone there for sure because I just think nobody can replace Dally. Yes, the world needs understudies. We love the understudies, but Joshua Boone is on the next level. Well, we get there and yes, Joshua Boone is in. Phew! Brent Comer is out. It's like, oh, it's fine. Victor, the understudy, we chatted about this the last time I saw it because I saw Victor then too. I've now seen Victor in it 3 times. So Brent, what's going on, buddy? I know. It's fine. You need your days off. I respect that. But I just need him in the show. So anyways, we saw Victor and Victor was great, but I just was a little let down that we weren't seeing Brent again. And really exciting, we had Ponyboy's understudy, Trevor. Let me find his last name. Sorry, I do not know it. Trevor Wayne. I really liked him. I really enjoy Brody Grant's performance. I love his voice. I love the rugged sound that he has. And I think that he makes the character of Ponyboy really 3-dimensional. And I think he's excellent. But I was actually pretty excited when I saw we had an understudy because I've seen Brody in it every single time. So I'm like, okay, this will be like a fun new show to see the show through this new Ponyboy's eyes. And it was really different. And Trevor, I wouldn't have said this myself, but Reed came and Kaylee came and Reed could compare both because he's seen Brody and now he's seen Trevor. So he was like, I feel like Trevor brings such like a boyishness nuance to the role. Like he plays it really young and it really fits for Ponyboy. I'm like, yeah, I see that. I definitely see that. What else about Trevor? His voice is beautiful. It's like, we all know Brody Grant's voice is very unique, right? It's like, I don't know, it like is really like thick. Is that a way to describe a voice? Like it's really full and like, it's very different than like your typical Broadway sound. Trevor has more of that gorgeous Broadway tenor voice that is so like I love. Like there are certain voices that I love. Jeremy Jordan, and they all have this in common. Antonio Cipriano, but they're very melodic and very pretty, but not necessarily like I am singing to you. They're more like, they have this like bit of like whimper in it. And that's how I've always described it, even though I feel like it makes little to no sense. But it's kind of like here, I'll do like Jeremy when he's like, now I'm falling, baby, through like the baby, like the little like whimper. I'm obviously not a professional, but there's definitely a word for that. And he like has that little sound that is so appealing to my ears. So I really loved Trevor. I thought he was a great understudy, and he made the role his own. He so obviously was not playing like copycat to Ponyboy, to Brody. I mean, like at this point, like Brody Grant and Ponyboy are synonymous. Like I just see them, they're the same. So anyways, that was Seeing the Outsiders. We got a few signatures on here. We were starving after the show, so we ran to go and get some pizza. And by the time we got back, we caught a couple of them at the stage door. And Joshua Boone, who like literally all night, I was just like, Joshua Boone. Like, it's his talent. Like, I am just so impressed by his talent. It's crazy. But he was so nice. He said to me at the stage door, he's like, you look familiar. But I've only ever talked to him at the stage door one time. And I was like, I've come a couple of times. But I feel like he probably says that to so many people because one, last time he introduced himself, he's like, I'm Joshua. And I'm like, Joshua, I know who you are. You do not need to introduce yourself to me. And like he's asked my name and stuff. So I guess it was like a little bit of a connection, but also I think he probably does that with a lot of people at the stage door. So anyways, I also obviously have the podcast but he's not on social media. So I was kind of like trying to piece together like what would he know me from? But I did make that video about me and Bryn ranting about his talent in The Outsiders, and that popped off, and like a lot of people in his circle, or so it seemed, were like reposting it. So maybe they sent it to him or something. Yeah, I bet that's what happened because that video did like somewhat well, and we were just like, let's talk about Joshua. Like he rocks our world. He's so amazing. So anyways, that was just an amazing night as always at The Outsiders, and I could not gauge my sister's like feelings towards The Outsiders because she was so subdued, and I'm like, what are you thinking? Like, I need to know. And it all like came through like 2 days later when she was like, and mind you, she had the worst time while we were rushing. It was raining, and like I think it's fun because you're surrounded by like-minded people, and like the payoff in the end is so rewarding when you get the tickets, but not everybody feels that way. And so she was like kind of miserable rushing for a show that she didn't know if she would like love. And by the way, we got there at 6:30 in the morning. But 2 days later, she was like, I want to go rush tomorrow. And I was like, what are you rushing? And she was like, I want to go for The Outsiders. And I was like, that means you loved it. Okay, I'm happy. I can sleep at night. But we didn't. But we will. I have a feeling we'll see it one more time before it closes. So the other show that I saw this week was Suffs. This was the second time that I have seen it. This is definitely a show that I've always felt like I want to see it more than once, but there needs to be some time in between because this is really like a meaty show. It feels long to me. And I think it's very smooth and linear, and the plot is easy to follow, and I like the way that it's written. Now that I've seen it a second time, I do think there are probably like 1 or 2 or 3 songs that could have been taken out. However, I really like this show, and it's nice to sit in a show, one, where you're learning, and you can kind of sit back and be like, oh, this is like interesting, and you can take it a little bit more seriously, and it feels like a learning experience, right? I think that that's really fun in a theater because it's one thing to like go and have a laugh and have a good time, and then it's another to like sit back and feel like, wow, this is something that I hadn't known before, and like I'm learning from this musical. And I think that that's a really good feeling, and also it's presented in such a fun and interesting way. We did have like one understudy. We had JG as the president, and I was so happy that we had Shayna at the helm of our production because I wonder how different Alice Paul's character is whenever it's not Shayna, because Shayna, she like wrote the book, wrote the score, like this is her baby, and of course she stars in the lead role. I can't imagine the difference. Like the difference between her portrayal of Alice Paul and somebody else's has to be like vastly different, I would say, because she's such a character, and I adore her. She, as y'all know, she like makes me so emotional because I think she's such an inspiration, and I'm just so impressed by her. And I love people like Lin who just put their heart and soul into musical theater, and they take it so seriously, and it's evident through their character, like their personal character. And she without a doubt does that, and I just think it's super duper admirable. But that being said, like this is her baby. And so somebody else might step into the role of Alice Paul, and I feel like they would approach it totally different because Shayna literally knows everything there is to know about this character, and she has thought about every element of all of the other characters on stage. So I like kind of would be interested to see one of the understudies just because I think that comparison would be very intriguing. But all in all, I absolutely adore this show. Is it a show I want to see every single night? No. Do I love it? Yes. Like this gets a 5 out of 5 for me. Like I really think it's a remarkable show. And the music is really, really good. Some of the songs, primarily the solo songs by Alice Paul, are so good. And they've been stuck in my head, which is the indication of a good musical, right? If you are leaving with a tune in your head, they've really, really stuck with me. And the entire cast, this is really such an ensemble piece because it's following the group of the Socs, and I just loved it. And it was very apropos after last week's protests that were plumb silly to go and see this show. And it became so much more clear because I could only remember certain scenes of like Ida B. Wells and Mary Church Terrell, but seeing it a second time, it's like, no, the Black suffragist movement is really prominent in this musical. So I disagree with the protesters. Gonna take a hard stance, but please don't protest me. But I do. I mean, this story, like I said this last week, so I don't want to be redundant. However, like Shayna Taub said, she wanted to focus on the discourse within the suffragist movement, and that's what she did. And she showed, okay, the white suffragists and Russian, right, versus the Black suffs and the issues that they faced within, and it's really prevalent. And I want to say one more thing just real quick while we are talking about it. If you want to hear from somebody who is in the cast that was discussing the protests and how they affected them personally, and I thought that it was a really good statement and a good way to kind of denounce them and be like, okay, thank you for not seeing me and what I am doing. Go to Layla Erica Drew's Instagram because she spoke about her feelings towards the protests. Anyways, I loved Socs. I love it so much. I love that it's a women-led production, and I think that that's remarkable. I will say, like, one kind of crazy critique I have is that the staging is a little off for me for Socs. The set pieces kind of come in and come out in a very non-graceful way that I feel. Like maybe it's because I'm so used at this point to Outsiders where everything is done so artistically with the moving of the beams and there's not really a lot of like set pieces coming in and out. But I just feel like the staging is off. There's like a big opening in the middle of the stage where they'll bring up and down this table. And whenever those stage grates open, it makes like a big noise and then the table comes through and then there's just like this big space under the stage that is showing and it's very obvious. I feel like maybe with the lighting they could have masked that a little bit, and like with the set pieces moving forward and back, it just feels like a little rickety is the best way to describe it. And so I don't know. That's my only critique is that I feel like the staging is bizarre and it's not super smooth. And that's definitely not something that I realized the first time that I saw it. Maybe because we were on like the second row all the way to the right. But this time we were in the mezzanine on the second row. So they were amazing rush seats, by the way. Amazing. I can't remember how much we paid, maybe $40. And I was so pleased with our seats. So definitely I would recommend the seats for Socs Rush. But maybe because we were on that elevated mezzanine, we could see that great opening and closing a little bit more. But yeah, I just feel like the set transitions were not smooth. But that's my only critique pretty much. Okay, guys, with that, let's head on in to our Broadway grosses. Okay, folks, this is for the week ending on July 7th. We had some shakeup last week, right? With Merrily being number one. Let's see if they're number one again. Which, do we even really have to ask if they were number one the week before their closing? Obviously, they're going to be number one the week of their closing. And yes, that is what I am seeing right now. They are number one. They won't be next week, but congratulations, Merrily. Sad. I'm literally so sad that they closed. But it was time. Like, don't overdo it. And they already brought it from off-Broadway onto Broadway. So, and I'm grateful for that. And they extended. So congratulations. Sad you closed. We would have had you for forever. But congratulations too on being number 1 for 2 weeks in a row. Lion King is number 2. Wicked is 3. Hamilton is 4. Cabaret is 5. Okay, so everything's basically just bumped down because Merrily is at the top. Aladdin is 6. Hell's Kitchen is 7. Now, let me note real quick because it's so important that we also look at the capacity because some of these shows are just in gigantic theaters. Well, Hell's Kitchen is not just in a gigantic theater. They are, but they also had a capacity of 100.3%. That is remarkable. I love that. Okay. Harry Potter is 8, but see, they only had a 93% capacity, so they're not selling out. The Outsiders is 9 at 102.4% capacity. Another week in the top 10, Outsiders. Let's go. Wow, that's amazing. Do y'all remember a few weeks ago when Bryn and I were celebrating the fact that Outsiders had grossed over $1 million? Well, now they're doing it every single week. Are we surprised? Of course not. Of course we're not surprised. And to round out the top 10, MJ is taking the 10th place, but they have 91% capacity. See? Okay, let's check out some that are a little bit lower and some of these shows that we have been tracking. So just to note, Moulin Rouge is probably in like the 15th spot. Aaron Tveit and JoJo, of course, will be coming into the roles soon at the end of this month, July 23rd, one day after my birthday, everybody. My birthday's on July 22nd, so be sure to wish your girl a happy birthday. And, you know, if you wanted to send me Aaron Tveit tickets for my birthday, you know, it's no big deal. I'm just kidding. I'm literally just kidding, but I do need to see Aaron Tveit so bad. Okay. So yes, Moulin Rouge is in the 15th place. I'm going to guesstimate the first full week that Aaron and JoJo are in the roles, Moulin Rouge will bump all the way back up to their lucky 7 spot. I like it. Book of Mormon is doing pretty well. They're right below Moulin Rouge. Water for Elephants had a 94% capacity. Okay, definitely not bad, but they're not grossing over $1 million. Y'all, Juliet, we never really talk about Juliet because I don't love the show and I just don't really track it. However, and it's that way for a couple of shows. Like I felt really bad about literally like some shows coming and going from Broadway and I don't even mention them on the podcast. But what are you going to do? Like you can't talk about every single show that's arriving, right? You have to kind of pick your favorites or else this podcast would be 5 hours long. Okay, but Juliet, they're pretty much like stable. They just recouped their investment. And so, yeah, they're stable. They're making money at this point. They have to pay their actors, but aside from that, they've paid out the producers and everything. They have 94% capacity. That's really good, but they're not grossing over $1 million week to week. So we just need to keep our eye on that and make sure, because it's been on for kind of a long time at this point. Once they drop under that like they're at 94%. Once they go under into the 80% territory, I feel like they just might close. I don't know, but I'm also not like diehard for this. I think there's a lot of diehard fans that could keep it on for longer. But those diehard fans, they're not going to be the ones that'll sustain you in the long term. It'll be the tourists. And I think that they get a good tourist crowd. Okay, Suffs is doing pretty well. They're below Juliet and everything else. They have 93% capacity. When I was there, it looked like it was totally full. But I really want it to last. But these numbers, we have at least a year, right? These numbers are giving me, we have a year, and then they'll probably reconsider their lease. So that's my guesstimation, right? And The Notebook is at 95% capacity, almost 96, and they're grossing a little over $500,000. So that announcement is probably going to come soon. They're not having an issue selling tickets. They're pretty much full, right? But the amount that they're making is probably not enough to sustain. I think that they're going to close, and I'm trying to think when. Maybe in the fall. I see that. And then Aaron Tveit will be off at the Moulin Rouge, and then John Cardoza can step into the role of Christian. It's perfect. No, I do not want to wish a closing on The Notebook, but I certainly want to see John Cardoza as Christian on Broadway. That would be the thing, because as y'all know, historically, I was coming back to New York literally every couple of months before I moved here to see Moulin Rouge. Since I have moved here, I have not seen it one time, which is crazy. But if John Cardoza was in the role, think I would find a seat at the Rouge pretty quickly. I adore him. Okay, we don't need to get into that, but he is my Broadway boyfriend forever. Love, love, love. Okay, let's get into our Broadway news. Okay, so when I am recording this, O'Mary just had their opening night. It was on July 11th, and we have the reviews. They are in, and let me tell you, they are some of the most positive reviews that I have ever seen. For one, they had all thumbs up except one thumbs down. Like, did you not get the memo? We're giving this show a thumbs up. It wasn't even like a middle. Y'all know I use Broadway World Review Roundup for my reviews because it puts them right there in bite-sized pieces, and you can kind of see in one go of how it did overall without going to all the different publications. So yeah, they got one thumbs down, just thumbs down, not even in the middle. Totally like did not like the show, thumbs down. But as for everybody else, they were in the green, all thumbs up, which is amazing. Let me read y'all some of these reviews because I think I need to see this. To start out, Greg Evans at Deadline said, quote, "There's funny, there's very funny, and then there's Oh Mary, Cole Escala's righteous new comedy that brings more laughs to Broadway than all the Gutenbergs, Edelmans, and Burbagalias combined. You can throw in Shucked for good measure," quote. That, like, I have chills. I'm like, you bring Gutenberg into the, like, message. I can't imagine anything ever being funnier. While I disagree and I doubt that it's going to make me giggle. Well, okay, I don't doubt. I think it's going to make me giggle, but y'all know Gutenberg has my literal full heart. Plus, not a news story this week, but Josh Gad is coming out with a memoir, In Gad We Trust. Y'all know I will be reading that. I am so excited. Side tangent, but back to the news story at hand. This is a very, very big statement, and it is setting very high expectations. But when it comes to a comedy, I am in that seat. I am sad and I am laughing. Like, I love a comedic piece on Broadway. And I'm excited. Let's read another one. Jesse Green at the New York Times, the historically very tough critic, he says, quote, "They protest too much. Oh, Mary may be silly, campy, even pointless, but stupid, I think not. Rather, the play, which opened on Thursday at the Lyceum Theater, is one of the best crafted and most exactingly directed Broadway comedies in years, which is a surprise on many levels, and on each level, a gift." These are glowing, y'all. Like, I cannot believe these reviews. I feel like we've spoken lately, these reviewers, well, they have really been enjoying comedies, and I put air quotes around comedy because they loved Heart of Rock and Roll, which I just don't understand. However, they have been really kind of taking it easy on comedies, I feel like. But this isn't feeling like taking it easy. They wouldn't bring all of these other shows into the fold and make these comparisons if they didn't really think that Oh Mary was better. So Sarah Holdren at Vulture, she says, quote, "The most controversial cabaret in town might be happening at the August Wilson Theater, but the best one is at the Lyceum. There, Cole Escala's righteous, extremely faux historical farce, Oh Mary, has begun its Broadway run, and long may it reign," quote. I just love when they bring in other shows because I feel like it's so shady to be like, that is the, like, most controversial cabaret, but this one is way better. Like, I think it's tea. It's tea. I love it. Okay, now, obviously, if we're reading all of these thumb up reviews, we have to read the one thumb down, right? Okay, so let's read it. It's Michael Summers of the New York Stage Review saying, quote, "A rival cartoon more hysterical than historical, Oh Mary sheds unexpected light upon the assassination of Abraham Lincoln and represents the latest generation of gender-bent comical entertainment known as camp. Elder viewers reared on the comparatively subtle writing and performance style of Charles Busch are likely to find Escala's slapdash artistry crude, but there's no denying he snags laughs," quote. That definitely feels like it doesn't feel necessarily bad because he is admitting that he snags laughs. But it does feel like snags laughs. Like, he doesn't draw it out of you. Like, he snags them here and there, right? It does feel a little bit negative. I would have to read the whole article to see if it was truly a bad review and what he was saying was bad. But since I haven't seen this show and it's kind of like mysterious, I don't know a whole lot about it, I don't want to read these reviews in full because I don't want to give away too much. But once I see it myself, we can circle back. Okay, fantastic. I'm so happy for the cast of Oh Mary because I know Cole Escala, he's been doing a lot of PR, and I know he was saying like he doesn't want to come to Broadway. He thinks it's a terrible idea. So hopefully this is an indication like you are supposed to come to Broadway. Don't even worry about it. And I love it for them. I wonder what well, we know it's in the Lyceum, but I wonder what that capacity is. Okay, it has 922 seats, so under 1,000. Yeah, that's on the smaller side. So I think that's a good fit, and they'll do well for themselves. It's been a while since the Lyceum had anybody in it. The last thing that I remember was Grey House. Was that the last show that was in there? It was supposed to be, of course, I can't remember it right now. It was supposed to be this other one-man show comedy. Oh, Lord, I can't remember, but y'all know what I'm talking about. It's been a while since this theater has been filled, so hopefully, I think that's a good sign. I think they're going to want Oh Mary to stick around for a bit. Moving on to our next news story, guys. We got some Lin Manuel Miranda news, which is one of my favorite pieces of news. But this news is very unexpected and intriguing. So, Lin reportedly, it is not confirmed by him or his team. It was in a Bloomberg report and it has not been confirmed. So, reportedly, Lin Manuel Miranda is working on a new concept album that is based off of the movie that came out in the 70s, Warriors. Have I ever heard of Warriors? No. Is it very similar feeling to a West Side Story or like a Grease, perhaps? Yes. And kind of similar to Outsiders. Well, actually very similar to Outsiders. If you haven't seen it, there are some clips on YouTube that I'm like, how is this not already a musical? Because it is so West Side Story coded. There's these two rival gangs, and actually I think there's a lot of rival gangs, but the main gang that they're following are the Warriors. They're from Coney Island. And all of these other gangs want to get them. That's basically what I gathered from the trailer. It is so indie looking and like kind of campy for this sort of topic, but that could just be because it came out in the 80s. Like, it's very interesting. Go watch the trailer and you'll know what I mean. It was just odd. And I definitely see it as a musical because, of course, this plot is so familiar to Broadway. But let's not get ahead of ourselves because this is not headed to Broadway. Broadway isn't even in the equation at this point. It is going to be a concept album, which we all know Lin loves to do. That was his original plan for Hamilton. He was going to do the Hamilton mixtape, and that would be that. And then, of course, it turned into a musical. I think maybe this is possibly just his process. He wants to put the concept album together, see how it does. If it picks up traction, then he might bring it to Broadway. But he's not doing it alone. In this article, it cites that it is co-written with playwright Isa Davis, and she's super familiar to TV. If you look up her credits, you will know something that she's worked on. She's really well known for the show Bull Rusher and Angela's Mixtape, but she's a playwright. It is co-written with the playwright Isa Davis. So that leads me to believe if she's a playwright, she's going to be working on a book for this as well. Or will the book already be a part of the concept album? Like, will there be dialogue? I don't know. Concept albums are kind of foreign to me because I just don't listen to them very often unless it's Hamilton. So, yeah, very interesting. I see it as a musical. I do not feel the need or the want for another one of these rival gang tropes to come to Broadway. But also, it's just a super digestible story and it's always fascinating and I feel like it always works. So maybe it's not the worst idea in the world, but it is. If you watch the trailer, my Outsider girlies, you're going to get nervous because if this comes to Broadway, Outsiders will, in fact, be its biggest competition. It is so Outsiders coded. So I want to read the synopsis of the show. Maybe it'll give you a better idea of why our boys over at The Outsiders might be in trouble. I'm just kidding. Like, let's not pit shows against each other, right? But it is called The Warriors. So you have The Outsiders and The Warriors. Like, it feels like the next musical should be these two rival musicals fighting each other. Did I just come up with a great idea? I think that I did. Okay, you're welcome, Lin. Do that instead. Okay, so to talk about the synopsis quote, it follows an NYC street gang traveling from the Bronx to their home neighborhood of Coney Island after being framed for murder. The original film created a brief moral panic over gang violence, leading to a mixed initial reception, but it has since become a cult movie favorite. Quote, yeah. I mean, it writes itself at this point. This is such a familiar plot. Is it something we love? Yes. I'm excited to a degree. And I certainly am excited to have another Lin Manuel Miranda musical potentially on Broadway. New York just did not count, right? It had too many other hands in it. It wasn't like purely a Lin piece of work. And that's what I want. I want something that is through and through Lin Manuel Miranda's work on Broadway that we can go and take a bite out of, because I just love that. But it sounds like it will be quite a while. If we're just now getting word that this might be in the works, then it'll be quite a while until we get the concept album. But do know I will be listening to this concept album once it comes out. And I kind of want to watch the movie now. I think it's like it says that it's a cult favorite. So I'm sure a lot of people have seen the movie. Reed was actually like, while I was watching the trailer, he was quoting what they were saying. And I was like, you've seen this? And he's like, yeah, this is super popular. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never even heard of it. Anyways, very exciting. Love my boy Lin. Moving on to our next news story, everybody. Romeo and Juliet is coming to the Art. We already know it's coming to Broadway, right? But this is a separate production entirely. It is coming to the Art, which is where Gatsby is currently playing. And it will be the show to open up their 2024-2025 season. Why are we reporting on this, Lindsay? Like Romeo and Juliet. Okay, it's way off Broadway. What's the dealio? Well, there's a personal favorite in it. In JJ from the Outer Banks is going to be Romeo. Oh my gosh, I love that. If you've seen the Outer Banks, I hope that you have. The character JJ, he's got blonde hair, he's super tan, he's kind of like the bad boy from like the rough parts, and he's got problems with his family. Anyways, I like him a lot. He is great. And I am really excited for this path it feels like he might be moving towards of doing more theatrical works. Love that for you, JJ. So yes, he is going to be playing Romeo. I kind of want to go. And it could be like a nice appetizer to the Broadway Romeo and Juliet. Plus, like, I know I already said this and we're not supposed to pit shows against other shows, but it is also fun to play the comparing game. And it could really be interesting because I feel like the Romeo and Juliet that is coming to Broadway is a play with music by Jack Antonoff, and it's starring Rachel Zegler and Kit Connor. I feel like that is going to be a very different rendition of Romeo and Juliet, right? I mean, just the fact that they're adding in music is super intriguing to me. So I feel like this one might stick to the bases a little more closer. And it might be nice to see like Romeo and Juliet more in its authentic form before seeing this other version, because I've seen the movie, but I don't know if the movie aligns that closely. I mean, of course, in school, we like read Romeo and Juliet and then we watched the movie, but that was so long ago. But anyways, it's kind of funny how so many books that you read in school then come to Broadway. But I guess it makes sense because they're classics, like The Outsiders, for example. I read that in school, and we all loved it. But yeah, also with Romeo and Juliet, what else? It's just, I feel like they're just primed for Broadway when they're a classic. Like The Odyssey, isn't that coming to off-Broadway or something soon? Or something adjacent to that? Anyways, yeah, I'm super duper excited for this. I would love to see it. I could do a little stint over at Boston. It's opening August 31st. So maybe I could do a double header and I could go see The Queen of Versailles. I don't remember how long that's running for, but I have a feeling they might overlap, or maybe they'll be close to each other. It's opening on August 31st and it is running through October 6th. That's like a relatively good amount of time for you to go and see it. They have a ton of ticketing discounts. So if you're interested, go on their website. The ticket prices start at $35. And there was like a slew of qualifications that you might qualify for in order to get discounted tickets. So love that. But let's talk about who else is cast in this show. So we have Rudy Pankow from Outer Banks as Romeo. We have Amelia Suarez as Juliet. Now, I looked her up. I don't see that she has a lot of theatrical credits to her name just yet. I'm sure they are coming. She is young, but she has done like some theater adjacent work, being that she was in Up Here, which was, I can't remember what it was on. I think it was on Hulu, and it was a musical TV show. I didn't personally like it. It felt like it was literally written for me. I'm pretty sure, like, the lead character, I think her name was Lindsay, and she had like just moved to New York and was figuring it all out. So I probably was its like prime demo, but maybe she sang in that show, so we could probably gauge her acting chops. I'm sure she's fantastic. And then maybe the biggest name, I don't know, is JJ from the Outer Banks bigger or Terrence Mann? I think it depends on who you ask, but Terrence Mann will also be in Romeo and Juliet as Friar Lawrence. Terrence, look him up. His Broadway credit page is like thousands of shows long. He has been in so many things. He has originated so many crazy roles like Rum Tum Tugger. He was an original cast member of Les Mis on Broadway. He was in A Chorus Line, the movie. He is a Broadway star and definitely, I'm guessing, the biggest get for this show. But for me personally, I will be going for JJ from the Outer Banks. But yeah, there will be more casting to come. And I think that this is exciting. It's always fun to learn what the off-Broadway theater houses are putting on, because I do feel like it's an indication of what is going to come to Broadway eventually. While Romeo and Juliet is already popping off, right? I don't really see this one coming to Broadway, but it could be an indication that Rudy is going to want to do more theatrical works. Maybe he's dipping his toe in this off-Broadway production, and maybe he'll come to Broadway eventually. I just love that. I love this journey for him. So just to round out this story, it will be directed by Tony Award-winning director Diane Paulus, and she is super well known for most recently working on Jagged Little Pill and Waitress, and she's also teaming up with Olivier Award winner Sidi Larbi Cherkau, who also worked on Jagged Little Pill and has done a lot of like touring shows like Beyonce and Madonna. Really interesting. And they say that they're going to have like a new visceral, fresh approach to Romeo and Juliet, which I feel like everybody says. But if you have directed Beyonce on tour, I think that definitely we're going to have a fresh approach. I love that. I mean, are they going to pull up to the partition, please? I'm just kidding. I had to have an excuse to sing on the podcast because I hadn't sang yet. But yeah, I think that this sounds really unique, and it's fun to see a show that is, I mean, okay, there are certain shows that are overdone, right? But it can be fun to see one of those shows. And yes, I would say Romeo and Juliet is likely overdone, of course. It's one of the most well-known, if not the most well-known piece of Shakespeare's work. But it can be fun to see the production presented in a new and fresh way and find things out that you maybe didn't recognize before. But at the end of the day, it is still Shakespeare. They're still going to be speaking in iambic pentameter, which I might be past that point in my life to really want to sit through a Shakespearean show. Like, they are a lot. You have to really think. You have to really think when you're watching it and like decipher what they're trying to say, because the words on the page with our current modern English language do not always represent what they mean. So you have to, it's just, I don't know. I think I might be over Shakespeare. I was trying to hype it up and get myself to that point of being like, it's super awesome to see a Shakespearean show and interpret its meaning and its depth and the symbolism. But now I'm like, never mind. Do I really want to sit through Shakespeare? Does anybody else feel like that? Am I just like too Gen Z for Shakespeare? I think it's because I had to learn so much Shakespeare back whenever I was acting, and I think I'm over it. Like, I feel jaded by it because you would have to sit there with the script and really be like, okay, the word is banana, but back then a banana symbolized a river. And so he's saying banana, he means river. How am I going to make the audience know that when I say banana, I'm really referring to a flowing, rushing river? And that is exhausting. Why can't it just be a banana? And with that, folks, thank you so much for listening to From the Mezzanine. If you are not already a Broadway bestie, I would love for you to join me over at the Patreon. It is $5.99 a month, and I do Broadway vlogs. We do the Meet Me at the Stage Door after chat. And I'm starting... Start spreading the news. I'm starting a new segment on the Patreon called FTM Storytime, where I tell y'all stories that have never before been heard on From the Mezzanine, and I give y'all more insight to my personal life and basically answer any questions that y'all may have asked me over the past 2 years of the podcast, and really like dive into some topics that we haven't chatted about before, all Broadway adjacent, of course, or like about the podcast history and things like that. So go and join me over on the Patreon. Like I said, $5.99 a month. I would love for you to become a Broadway bestie because they're the best, and I love y'all over there, and we have a lot of fun. Furthermore, everybody, BroadwayCon is coming up. BroadwayCon is on July 26th to July 28th. I will be there. Want to see me there? Enter code From the Mez at checkout for 15% off your tickets. I got you, girl. We don't need to be paying full price. Come on, get the discount. But BroadwayCon's going to be super fun. Some FTM favorites will be in attendance. Let's see. We are going to get spotlighted shows from Suffs, Outsiders, Six, The Wonderful World, a Louis Armstrong musical, which we haven't really gotten to hear much about yet. But also some of our favorite actors will be there. We have Jared Grimes, Gray Henson, King, love him, James Monroe Iglehart, Thane Jasperson from Hamilton, L. Morgan Lee, Cara Lindsay, Fergie L. Felipe, Anthony Rapp, everybody from the OBC of Rent, Shayna Taub, Nick Walker. I mean, BroadwayCon is going to be a ball and a half. I hope to see you there. It is taking place July 26th to July 28th, and it is going to be at the Hilton Midtown. I'm ready. I'm ready for BroadwayCon, y'all. I'm excited. Get your tickets now and use promo code From the Mez at checkout for a 15% off discount. Okay, guys, thank you so much for listening. Leave me a rate and review wherever you're listening right now. Go follow me on Instagram and TikTok. All of the links are in the show notes below, or you can find me by simply typing in From the Mezzanine in Instagram and TikTok. And thank y'all so much for listening, and I will see you next Tuesday. Bye!